In this video, we're going to count down the top 10 sailing channels on YouTube by revenues. The highest paid 10 sailing channels. You will not believe how much some of these channels make. I made this video 4 years ago in 2018, something like that. And boy, the incomes have just, I thought they were pretty high then, but they've just gone through the roof in the last 4 years. So this is my projections for what these channels will make, these top sailing channels will make in 2022. Subscribe to the Slow Boat Sailing channel, where we give you the stories of the most interesting sailors in the world in our round-the-world adventure. So I wrote a paper studying the sailing channels and their crowdfunding. We're using some of the data from that paper. We're estimating that these channels are making about $6 per patron per episode, but they're only getting half of that because patrons, so the number one source of income for all these channels is patreon.com, that they have patrons to give them money, and some of these channels have thousands and thousands of patrons. Actually, the majority of the top 10 do have over 1,000 patrons. So that's their primary source of income. But they also get AdSense revenues. And I'm estimating that they're making about $4 per 1,000 AdSense revenues based on my experience as a video creator with 2 channels of over 10,000 subscribers. And then the other, and those are the primary sources of income. But sometimes these channels also get like affiliate links, and they get sponsorship deals, right? So, for instance, people think that Vagabonde 3 with Rapido Trimaran, that's a sponsorship deal. I'm not doing that. I'm only looking at what they're getting from Patreon, and I'm looking at what I'm estimating. These are my estimates, so blame me. My day job when I'm not making videos is that I'm a finance professor, and I'm estimating that their AdSense revenues, so YouTube creators get revenues for the views that they make, and they also get revenues from their patrons who pay them per video typically. Alright, so I'm assuming they're making weekly videos. I looked at the top 26 creators on sailingchannels.com by views. All creators that had more than 25 million views, right? So 25 million or 25 times more than my channel at least. And so these are very successful creators. If you start a sailing channel, you won't be so lucky. Probably, but maybe. All right, so there's a lot of new entrants from last time, but there's also a lot that you would know, but the numbers are different. Okay, so let's start out with free range sailing. Number 10, free range sailing. They've got a 30-foot monohull called Mirul, and it's crewed by Troy and Pascal, an Australian couple. I'm estimating that they are making $323,000 in 2022 based on their monthly views as measured by Social Blade and their 490 patrons on patreon.com. And then at number 9 is the Swedish couple Rand Sailing, which are currently sailing in the Atlantic Ocean near Madeira, and that's crewed by Malin Johan and their daughter Vera, born in 2019. They started out with a 40-foot aluminum sloop, or aluminum monohull, I don't know if it was a sloop, but they've upgraded to Najad, a 44-footer, and they look like they're doing some really great stuff. And then at number 8 is the Canadian couple Sailing Nahoa. Now, I've seen a lot of their videos. Let me tell you that Rand Sailing, I'm estimating, is making $461,000 in 2022. Now, this is revenues. This is before their production expenses. So if you're in foreign ports, you got to pay for internet. That's expensive. You got to pay for cameras. I'm not, counting their boat. Subtracting their boat expenses, so their production expenses are going to cut down these numbers, but that's a lot of money. And then they have 717 patrons. Rand Sailing does. At number 8 is Sailing Nahoa. They have their boat Nahoa is a catamaran, which I believe is on the Heart in Thailand. They just had 2 babies, so they had, it's crewed by Ben and Ashley, husband and wife, and Willa and Bodie are their toddler / baby. So Willa's a girl and Bodie's a boy, and they say they're not going to have any more kids after this. But they've been, like all sailors, like we have been, they've had a lot of trouble getting back to their boat because of the pandemic, and they've been doing some other things more recently than sailing on the big boat Nahoa. But they say they're going to be back there soon. And then at number 7 is Sailing Nahoa at number 8. We're estimating $477,000 in revenues in 2022. They've got 553 patrons and 340,000 subs and 48 million views so far. And then at number 7 is Sailing Project Atticus. I've not really been following Sailing Project Atticus until I created this list, but they've got they were not on the previous list. They have I'm estimating they make $487,000 in 2022 in revenues. They've got 42 million views total and over 240,000 subs and over 750 patrons. Okay, so there's Sailing Project Atticus up there. They're on Atticus 2. I think they're based out of Maine, so I think they're a U.S. couple, but they've been most recently sailing the ICW. And their boat may still be for sale, so you might be able to get their first boat. And then we got at number 6, and Sailing Project Atticus, I'm 487,000 estimating. And then at number 6 is Acorn to Arabella. And I guess I should say a little bit about my methodology about who classifies as a sailing channel. I looked at people that owned a boat, basically, or that they were sailing a boat and that they had been sailing sailboats. They may not be sailing sailboats at the moment. They might at the very moment have an RV, or they might have a power boat. We'll see an exception, but they have a lot of their videos have been about sailboats, and I've also included people that have been building boats. So Acorn to Arabella is a slow boat sailing podcast guest. So it is Steve and Aaron are the team, although I interviewed Steve and Alex on the Slow Boat Sailing podcast. And they are building a 38-foot wooden boat in Steve's backyard, essentially in Massachusetts, from the fallen tree. And they've built, in the many years that Steve has been working on it, they built the hull, and they're starting to do the interior of the hull. It's still not hit the water yet, but if you're really into boat building, I think that's a channel you want to check out, especially if you love wood. And then another slow boat sailing podcast, and I'm estimating that Acorn to Arabella is making $831,000 in 2021 2022, sorry, with their 1,295 patrons. So what distinguishes all these creators from other creators is the number of patrons they have. And typically these patrons are going to be pledging about $6, and they're making, I'm estimating they're making about $3 per video, and then these channels typically do weekly videos. Okay, so let's look at Gone with the Wynns. Okay, so Gone with the Wynns, they very nice couple. You know, you're looking for a very wholesome couple, but also tremendous videographers. With 493,000 subscribers, you can see there. At the time I'm recording this, I'm estimating they're making $1.1 million approximately in 2022, with 1,608 patrons, right? And they've had over 100 million views, so they're one of the few creators in the 100 million view club, and they have 490,000 subscribers, so they're knocking on the door of 500,000. So I can remember when there were only that Vagabonde was the first creator to hit 100,000 subscribers in the sailing vlogger category, and now everybody on this list is over 100,000 subscribers, and so Jason and Nikki Wynn, I think they're currently in New Zealand. They bought their boat in Miami, didn't know anything about sailing. For a long time they had an RVing channel, but they've been just ripping it up in the South Pacific. They actually stayed at a boatyard just recently, the boatyard Tonga in Vava'u, where the slow boat was the season before. They got stuck there during the pandemic. Slow boat's been stuck in New Caledonia because of the pandemic. But hopefully we'll get to see them on the water. Such a nice couple, and make great videos. And you can hear them on the Slow Boat Sailing podcast. And then Sailing Uma. So Sailing Uma is kind of punching above their weight in terms of their revenues, right? And that's because they have so many. Sailing Uma is number 3. Number 4, sorry, skipped, is Sailing Doodles. All right, so number 4 is Sailing Doodles. This is led by Bobby, former pilot, who, if you followed his story, he had a medical diagnosis that didn't allow him to be a commercial pilot anymore. I think he's since overcome that diagnosis. He's got his own channel, Flying Doodles 2, but he's also a great sailor. He used to be sailing with his Labradoodles. Now he's not sailing with his Labradoodles, and he's not currently in a sailboat, but he has been in a sailboat, sailed a sailboat from the U.S. to Asia, I think, just recently. So he kind of switches boats, and a lot of times is sailing other people's boats and filming it wonderfully. And you can't. Everybody wants to click on his videos, and so he's number 4 on the list. And I'm estimating he's making about $1.3 million in 2022, with 1,600 patrons. Almost 440,000 subscribers, and 210 million views. So he's actually number 2 in views. So he's getting more money from ads on YouTube than anybody else on this list, except for one. Actually, he may be getting more, because in terms of monthly views, I think he's on Social Blade. He has more monthly views than even the number 1 channel. Okay, and then so he's coming up fast. So he might not be 3. I don't think he was on this list in 2017 or 2018 when I made the list before, but he's very high on it now. And then number 3, I let that out, is Sailing Uma. And they're kind of into minimalist sailing. I don't think they've changed their boat. You know, it's all electric boat. Dan and Kika, right? And let's see, they most recently went to Svalbard, I think. So at 80 North, right? So they're doing kind of adventure cold weather sailing right now, and they just, you know, their slogan used to be "Don't buy a couch," right? So they're really into kind of minimalist sailing. So if that's what really appeals to you, you might want to check out Sailing Uma, minimalist sailing on a not super expensive boat. And then number 2, I bet you can guess who's number 2 is Sailing SV Delos. So, SV Delos used to have the reputation of being the party boat, and maybe they still are, but they're also the family boat. So, currently it's led by Karen and Brian Troutman, and they just had a baby, so now it's a more family-oriented, but they still looks like they're having a lot of fun in the sun. And they've been, I think it's an ML 53 that Brian Troutman bought back in 2008, back when he was a software engineer, but that's a long ways gone, and he's doing a lot better than a lot of software engineers. I'm estimating he's making $1.3 million per year in revenues from his YouTube channel and Patreon. You know, like Sailing Uma, he's got over 2,000 patrons, almost 200 million views, and 760,000 subs. So number 2 in subscribers. But you don't make money from subscribers, you make money from views on YouTube, and they make money from Patreon is my primary, what I'm estimating from. And then the final one, I'm sure you can guess this one too, is Sailing Le Vagabonde. Okay, so Sailing Le Vagabonde, the 20-somethings, I suspect, are 30-somethings now, with 2 kids. They're moving towards their 3rd Sailing Le Vagabonde, so it's headed up by Riley Whitenham and Elena Caruso, and they've got 2 kids. They got Lennon and a new baby, and they just left Australia, came back to the U.S. to pick up Sailing Le Vagabonde 2, their Outremer 45 catamaran, but they're having their 60-foot Rapido trimaran built, I think, in Asia. So they're sailing the old boat, which is not very old, but you know, I think when they explain, so this would be an instance of, like, you know, sponsorships. How much does that matter? I think it matters, but I don't think it's huge. I don't know the arrangements for the Rapido trimaran, but they have talked about their arrangements for the Outremer, and they said that they got favorable financing from Outremer as part of the promotional thing. Both the Outremer 45 catamaran, they used to have a Beneteau. They started out, I think, with a Beneteau, which I believe they sold. I don't know. And then the Outremer and then the Rapido trimaran are both very fast cruising boats. So I'm estimating that they make twice as much as anybody on the number 2 person on the list, which was Sailing SV Delos. They make almost $3 million per year, $2.9 million per year, with over 330 million cumulative views and 1.6 million subscribers, and they've got 4,500 patrons. That's twice as many as any other sailing channel on the list, and that's their primary source of income, or revenues in this case. Okay, up here we've got my estimates. Those are my estimates, not confirmed. They're my educated guesses about what they'll make in 2022. So glad we got a chance to update this list for you for 2022. Like I say, I did a video about how much I made from 1 million views, and it was like $2,000, like $13 a week a few years ago. So, and my study, which is at linuswilson.com, you go to research and you find my Patreon study. I'll put a link in the description too. You know, most of the sailing channels that I studied back in 2017 and now is co-authored with my co-author Wendy Yan Wu of Wilfrid Laurier University. Most of the channels that people that had sailing channels, they had no patrons, right? They had 0 patrons. Most of the people that set up Patreon pages had 0 patrons, right? So if you think that there's like easy riches there making these, I don't think that's true. You know, I think that everybody on this list is great at what they do, and they've had a little bit of good luck too. And, you know, I think that you can't expect that if you buy a boat. For instance, I said I have 2 channels. My least popular channel is the Slow Boat Sailing channel. My most one is the Linus Wilson channel, which is about video games. And so there's a lot of things that you can make on YouTube that probably are easier to do. I would say video games is a lot easier to you know, get views and subscribers, but it's going to be different for everybody else. So don't buy a boat for the money. Do it because you want to do it. That's why we're sailing around the world, because we want to do it regardless of the views and regardless of the money, which is there is no money for us. But there's some money for these guys up there. So subscribe. Thanks for watching. Tell me who your favorite channels are, who you think should have been on this list, who you think is the next up and coming channel. Tell me what you like about the people on this list. I'm Linus Wilson. Bye-bye.